It just it never fails, guys. So thank goodness. Oh, I can already see. There we go. I needed to delete a comment from an old system setup thing. So I have technical problems, guys. I'm just a walking technical problem. If you're on my team, you know I'm a walking technical problem. So what I had intended to do was to show up and like have this little Streamlab thing set up, and it was going to live stream me here and on X and on YouTube and like something else, right? Because I just felt like I wanted it to be able to like go different places because I keep having these problems with exposure. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. So I wanted to do all that and like set up my camera really good, and I just cannot get it to work. I can't get it to do it on my phone. And so we're just going to go old school. We're just going to go live. I actually had somebody one time tell me that I should consider going Amish. Like, have any of y'all ever been accused of being somebody who should just kind of like give up on technology altogether and just quit? Because I actually was encouraged to quit technology altogether at one point. So I'll figure this out. We're just playing with things. We're trying things. So, hey, I'm Kristen and I live in paradise. I live in St. Petersburg, Florida. I used to live in Texas. My husband and I are both native Texans, and we moved to Florida this past summer, honest to goodness, just because we wanted to live at the beach. People ask us all the time, why did you move to Florida? Was it a job? Was it a this? Was it a that? We 100% decided that we wanted to move for the beach. And then my husband found a job here with a really fantastic nonprofit startup that is just getting its legs underneath it. It's called Tours of Duty. They're incredible. But before I digress too far, I just wanted to kind of introduce myself and kind of like where I'm at. Because one of the reasons we moved to the beach was because our life was like bonkers traumatic for a while, and we really need to talk about that because what's happening to like the former president and the January 6th defendants, I mean, and there's just a litany of these cases that I can tell you about from combat prosecution, sadly. And what we're seeing right now in the news is the product of all of these cases that happen to people like us, like ordinary people like us, who are still languishing in prison because what they do is they've done it so many times to people who really couldn't defend themselves. And then they started escalating that more than American citizens. It was into people who are in power. And now they're doing it to somebody who is the former president. Like, you cannot go higher than that. And they're doing it in front of our faces because we did not take action when it happened before, because honestly, we didn't know what to do. But I got to the finish line on this. And the reason that I got to the finish line on it is because of President Trump, who pardoned my husband. So, you know, like by day, I just kind of look like this, you know, semi-hippie, you know, Floridian that just moved here from Texas. You know, also probably your like neighborhood cringy, you know, social media makeup business owner, right? But in reality, I have been basically like hit by lightning twice in the course of our life. First, that having to do with the cringy makeup business. So I'll just tell you quickly the backstory on that, because like you can't do social media with me, like live in my world and not run into my makeup business. And like that's a problem. So just kind of like the backstory on this is I started like the most amazing makeup business online, like social media selling this incredible lip products, lash products. I use it all. I wear it all. I still wear it to this day. I still have a thriving business, a good business to this very day. And I started it in 2016. And when I started doing that, I enjoyed, like, I got hit by lightning. It was not just your typical like gal on the internet, you know, put on our lips and lashes and stuff and doing tutorials. It turned into a gigantic lipstick empire. And over the course of the last 8 years, that business has done like $40 million in group sales in literally makeup and skincare over the course of 8 years. And so I got struck by lightning in that business, and to this day have a huge network marketing business. And I love that business. Like, I'm passionate about it. It is the reason why I am here and like I am alive today right now. But I feel this pressure to like separate it from my social media because of, you know, kind of what all that kind of like snowballed right throughout 2020, where like everybody kind of got online and started selling things online, and it just snowballed. Like, I get it. But I've been here a long time, and I was like, this is my life. This is my livelihood. I can't separate this from my presence online, but I felt this pressure too. So I just have been struggling so hard to talk to you guys. And I don't know if any of y'all are business owners as well. I know a lot of you are, because a lot of you know me through my business. Like, how hard it is to show up authentically online when your business is such a huge part of your life and people kind of don't want to hear about it, right? And it feels put on, and it feels like this and it feels like that. But like, literally, I spend every day talking to these girls and doing these things. And I'll get into more of this like later, but it's the reason like I made it through all of this. Like, literally every last component of this is because of my network marketing business. So I had to come to a place where, like, even if I feel a little judged or cringy, I just need to be able to like talk about my business and love my business openly again. So I'm just going to love my business openly again, even if the world is kind of like not for the whole network marketing thing right now, because it kind of saved my life. And so I'm going to be bothered, because I realize that about myself. I'm trying to be unbothered. No, I'm actually a bothered person. I get bothered about a lot of things, but I have decided I'm going to be unashamed. So I'm going to be unashamed about the fact that I love my network marketing business, and it completely has provided my whole life for me, my mindset, my personal development. Like, God gave that to me at a moment in time that I needed it. And what that did was it led me to the place where I hit that like second lightning strike in 2020, when my husband was released from prison by President Trump after 6 years in a federal penitentiary for crimes he did not commit. Stemming back to that whole Blackwater massacre thing, and I'll tell you all about that, guys. Like, we'll get into that. But I kind of needed you to understand like who I am and why it is I've been having the hardest time showing up here. So I actually had to take a couple of notes, because in true Kristen fashion, so yesterday I sat down and decided I was going to pre-record all this content, because I've been taking all of these courses on like, how do I get people to love my business as much as I love my business again? I'm like, okay, well, that means I have to create better content, more of this, more of that, more videos, more fancy. And so I have been working on this since December, creating systems and trying to like brush up all of this content and create all of this high quality stuff, just so people will love my content as much as I do. And I have been so exhausted by that. And so I sat down yesterday and I'm like, I'm going to finally do it. I'm going to do it. And I start trying to pre-record this content. And it just feels so unnatural to me. You know what I mean? Like, I can see that y'all are out there. And even if we're not like, like typing back and forth to one another, and I'm not speaking directly to your name and you're not speaking directly to mine, like, knowing you're out there is just a different conversation than talking to myself and worrying what people will think and having the option to delete it. So I sat here and I did like 60 takes yesterday and was like, I can't do this. And I was like, forget it. I'm not separating my life from my business, and I'm not doing all of this ridiculous edited content just to tell y'all what y'all need to hear from me and what you want to hear from me. Y'all have said you want to hear this from me. I have 5,000 followers who want to hear from me. But then you saw, I tried to start talking. I tried to say anything, and the links are broken. They're suppressed. We can't share it. This doesn't work. That link doesn't work. I had to go to a link shortener so that it wouldn't populate the title of my live video in my live video. So like, they're making it so hard for me to show up. So I have to like try to trick it by doing all these algorithms and workarounds and not saying people's names and using emojis, and it's ridiculous. So I decided to do this live video last night. I set it all up. I write basically what I wanted to say today to kind of explain to y'all how I ended up here, and then try to do some technology with you guys, so that way we can avoid this whole like, you're trying to figure out what did you miss, like where is her stuff, is it coming up, am I following her, is it going to come up in my feed? And I'm wondering like, how much in my soul am I pouring into content that no one is going to see? And so if you're watching this right now, we're going to do a little experiment, and I signed up for something called ManyChat, and it is a little like a little robot. And what the robot will do is it will send you a message. So we're going to send it a trigger word. Just call it, well, I'll tell you what it is first. Hang on. So what I think I want to do is I just want to go live. I've got like mapped out, like I want to, you know, kind of go in chronological order. I've got to tell y'all all the stories, right? Like I gotta tell y'all about the surprise deployment from our honeymoon. I've got to tell y'all, like, we have strip club stories, plural. Like I don't know why my husband and we are the most boring people on the planet, but I like literally have the weirdest strip club stories. So I have all of these great stories to tell you that you don't want to miss, and I don't want to pour my soul into and have them just go out into the internet and not go anywhere. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do my content, and then once a week on Friday, I'm going to take the links to it all, and I'm going to put it in a text, and I'm going to have the robot send it to you. And it'll just have like the title of the live, like what did we talk about and what is the link to the live video. And then on Friday, you don't have to wonder like what I talked about that week. And then like as you're going into the weekend scroll, you can click on the ones you're interested in, skip the ones you're not. And so we can do this. And as it like just morphs back into me, like doing normal life and talking about all these stories and doing things, you don't have to worry about if you're seeing your content or not. I don't have to worry about it. So like, I just want to throw that out there. And so what I set up was this trigger word in ManyChat, and it was recap. If you'll type recap in the comments, I think a little bot is going to DM you in Facebook and then give you a little opt-in form where I can just text you once a week with the links to the content. So let me check my notes here really quick while you do that. Just hit, what did I just say? Recap. So y'all, I stayed up all night long trying to set this stuff up. Like, technology whips my ass, going back to the Amish comment. So technology whips my ass. I stayed up all night trying to set up this like Streamlabs thing. Could not get that to work. The ManyChat thing, we're going to see if that works. So y'all have got to comment recap for me. And I did it in all four. It was like recap, lowercase, recap, uppercase, recaps, uppercase, recaps, lowercase. So I tried everything, every iteration. And we're going to see if y'all get some DMs. And of course, I can't see any comments. I'm assuming there are comments, but I cannot see them right now because I've done something wrong again. So don't see any comments. So I'll go back and see if there are comments later. And let's see. Okay, so here we are. Okay. Now let's talk about the Blackwater Massacre thing, because that's what we showed up here for, right? So the Blackwater Massacre thing, if you remember that, you probably have the impression that there was, you know, a few guys, like these kind of like caricatures of men, these like mercs, these mercenaries. I'll tell you all about that, like what a mercenary is and all of that good stuff, and like why my husband chose to be a mercenary and all that good stuff. We'll get into it. But you probably have this impression that there are these like four like off the rails, like got kicked out of the military for being like Rambo style in the movies, and like ended up with these like shady private contractors in the underbelly of the war or something like that, right? Because it is so sensationalized and so like wildly like media driven, and then take it from there and like expand that into that these four people just like broke in the heat of war and went into this like busy square in like called Nazur Square in Baghdad, and just like posted up and shot a bunch of people for no reason whatsoever. None at all. And none of these people had any criminal records. They all have exemplary service records, honorably discharged from the military, joined a private military, all U.S. citizens that went to work for a U.S. company on a U.S. contract, living on a U.S. base with the U.S. Department of Defense and state personnel. These are not like shady underbelly people. These are literally the guys that are like down the road, the architects down the street, right? A lot of them are in private security now. A lot of them are in construction, music, the arts, like they're all over the place. And these are just your normal next door neighbors who just simply took a different path with their career. So I'm going to tell you about that. I'm going to tell you exactly why we picked to work with a contractor versus Paul going back into the Army full time. So that was us. Like that was us, and that was completely, entirely mischaracterized. And if you think of it, then you think these like four completely normal people, like your neighbors, just went and like went crazy, shot the place up in a war zone. And then, it took 7 years from the time that the incident took place for the actual trial to take place, which took place in front of a civilian jury in Washington, D.C., 7 years later, in front of I cannot even tell you how corrupt this judge is. Also, we called him Baconator. I'll tell you about that too. But it went in front of this incredibly corrupt judge in front of a venue shopped location where it should have been in either Tennessee, Texas, Utah, New Hampshire. There were 5 defendants from 5 different places in the country where we'd have likely gone up in front of people who had some concept of even gun ownership. But they went in front of a civilian jury in Washington, D.C. 7 years after the fact because the case had been dismissed in a 90-page scathing review for reckless rights violations. And finally, just before the statute of limitations ran out of the case, the government, under the Obama-Biden administration, got a judge to say, yeah, we could do that again because I definitely see the problem in Iraq right now. And it was all about the status of forces agreement and standing up this guy named Prime Minister Maliki. And I'll tell you all about that too. I will just do the Middle East for Dummies because that is what I require right now is Middle East for Dummies, because even in the midst of going through this and being at the whims of these people making these decisions, we had no idea that the reason we were going through this was because the status of forces agreement being negotiated in the background. We had no idea until Hillary Clinton's WikiLeaks came out, the way they were discussing these cases that had absolutely nothing to do with individual culpability or accountability for something that actually happened. And it only had everything to do with ensuring their diplomatic relationship with the Iraqi government remained how they wanted it. And so we just didn't know that. So probably about half of you are like, oh, I knew it. I knew it. Probably half of y'all are looking back at all that like something seemed screwed up to me about that the entire time, didn't it? And then some of y'all are probably like, you know what? I totally bought that. I definitely thought those guys were a bunch of murdering assholes. But you know what? Now in retrospect, I can see it. And then there's this other population of people who will simply never choose to listen or understand because they don't want to. And that's okay. That's okay. I don't have any energy for that. I don't argue. One of the things that really kind of kept me back from just coming out here and doing this was I just can't argue, man. I can't defend myself. I just got no time for this shit. I got no fucks to give. I'm 43. I never know how old I am. I'm either 42, 43, or 44. I'm in this little weird gap. I don't know. But I think I'm 43, and I saw this meme the other day, and I'm sorry, y'all, I cuss on my social media. So if y'all don't like cussing, please go follow my husband. He is the nice one. I am the cussing one. I am the say all the thing ones. I'm the loud one. I'm the savage. He's just over here trying to whoo, girl. He's the calm one. So if you want the story without the cussing, go follow my husband. He's got a book coming out in July. You will love it. But if you want strip clubs and cussing, that's what we're doing here, and makeup. We do strip clubs, cussing, and makeup here. So I just wanted, on my notes, I pointed out 50% are yeah, I totally knew that. 50% were oh, I can see it. And for the other 0%, I have 0% energy for anybody who chooses to misunderstand me. So just know right now, if you could share this far and wide, anybody who wants to come listen, take a listen. Anybody who wants to come argue in the comments and talk shit and make me feel like I need to defend myself, I just have no energy for it. So I was going to pause and say, I saw this meme the other day. I posted it on my timeline and everybody was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you said the F word so many times on your timeline. And honest to goodness, the only person I worry about is my mama. So mama, I know you're out there and I know you're just sitting back watching me oh, my kid. But you are so gracious and you are so loving. And I thank you so much for letting me be me. But I posted this and it said that, in your 30s, you think you kind of have this 0 F's mentality about life, but you don't realize until 40, until you fully ascend into 0 F-lessness is what it said. And so it was hilarious. And it really just kind of described where I am. So the thing was like, I felt like if I came out here and I had to talk about all this, that first of all, I was going to have to defend myself or defend my husband. And I'm just all done with that. Like, there's a book about that. There's podcast. It's called Raven 23 Presumption of Guilt. Sean Ryan show. Great podcast. Love that one. We're episode 11. So the defending part is done. If you want the facts, you got to go find the facts elsewhere. I also have trauma brain. So I'm going to tell you anecdotes. I'm going to tell it how I remember it. It's not what's in the book at all, because what the book is, you know, like the factual recounting, and it is arresting. And I read it this weekend, and it is so freaking good. And it is so much stuff that like I didn't know. Like, I got to read like the transcripts of Pete Hegseth's conversation with the investigative journalist who did the podcast series and is like working on the documentary and the book and everything. And it was like, oh my gosh. And I just got to see behind the scenes on some things, and the book is going to be so good. So if you do that whole recap thing, I will make sure that within this bot system somewhere that everybody who's, you know, does that will absolutely get a link when the book drops, so you can get that. And I'll send out links within the next few days or so to anybody who like subscribes with the podcast links, you know, and things like that, so you can kind of get that stuff easily. So, zero energy. I won't defend myself. I won't argue about it. I am going to tell all of my stories. And, I just had to be able to come here and do it live and let it be what it is. So, all right, I've talked long enough, and now I've got to do a really fun story, because we just need to do stories now. All right. So that's what we're doing. Okay. So to get my, so we're just going to start at the beginning. It's like, where do you start? At the beginning? Because if you're here talking to me, you want to know maybe a little bit about who I am. So I am Kristen. I grew up in Carrollton, Texas. My husband's family called me a North Dallas Yankee. He's from West Texas. We met in college at a party school at Texas Tech. And I'm just like I would consider like an average, like mediocre-ish, like suburban Dallas white chick, right? Like, there's just like, you know, the gifted and talented club, you know, made the volcanoes, you know, did all that kind of stuff. Odyssey of the Mind, UIL, academic decathlon, like definitely did all of that when I was a kid. And then I was in the band and the color guard, if that just like kind of lets you know who I am, like just a solid like B string, had a, you know, fun high school experience. Went to Texas A&M for a couple of years, and then transferred out to Texas Tech, where I met my husband. Well, he had gone from high school, you know, straight into the military, and was in the military when 9/11 happened. I was at Texas Tech at the time. He was in the military at the time. We did not know each other, and he was in the military, and he deployed to Bosnia when he was with the Army, like full time, because he did 8 years with the Army. 4 years of that was active, and 4 years of that was when he was when he was in the National Guard, and he was in college, and that's when we met. Like, when I met him, he was a college student. He was just like drilling, you know, weekends and a couple weeks a year, and he was considering being a lawyer at the time. So when we met, guys, first of all, I was cocktail waitressing at a bar, and this boy comes up to me on, like, it's a legitimate, like, bachelor party. It's a bachelor party. And he does not, I find out after the fact, he does, like, not hit on girls, right? So, but he's had drinks. We live in a college town. He's had drinks. He's at the bar. It's a bachelor party. And this man comes up to me and asks me if I want to have a steak or go skydiving. And I have absolutely, I don't think in my entire life, been the recipient of a like solid, cheesy pickup line from an attractive dude that I was actually interested in. So like, my interest was piqued. I was actually piqued by the cheesy compliment. But I refused to give him my number because I have boundaries. And like, I was like grandma in college, where it was like, I'll go party, but you can't have my number, or I'll go and drink, but we're going to take a taxi home. Like, we were pretty good about things. So I would not give this man my number, but I said, hey, if you'll give me your number, I'll call you. And he's like, no, you won't. But this was like perfect in the moment, because he reverse psychology the crap out of me. And just I honestly think out of pure defiance at that point, I remembered to call him after I left work that night, because like, I normally family would not have probably remembered otherwise, but he had just insisted that I would not call. And he just, when you're watching this, you know me. All right, so he reverse psychologied me into calling him that night, and no kidding, this boy picks up the phone and he says, "Remind me, who are you? What were you wearing?" And I was like, "Dunk." And I hung up the phone. I go to bed. I had just been at work, so I was completely sober, and he was completely, not sober, and it was, college, whatever. So next day he calls and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I know exactly who this was. This is exactly what you're wearing. I remember what I said when you called in the middle of the night, and I am horrified. Can I take you to dinner?" And I was like, "Actually, you can. I don't know why, but you can." And he took me to dinner at Joe's Crab Shack. I had the coconut shrimp, and 3 months later we were living together, and within a year we were married. That was 20 years ago this upcoming May. 20 years ago this upcoming May, and it has been one hell of a ride, guys. I cannot even tell you. It has been one hell of a ride. I'm sitting in paradise with a man who has walked through something with me since July that I cannot even begin to describe. Like, if you were watching all these reels about like healing your family and doing the work, whew, this man, he came here for that. He came here for that. We came here for that. And that's what we have been doing. And 20 years of marriage, we have spent by the time he came home, less than half of it together, either because of deployments or prison. Like, literally half of our marriage, we have not even been able to live together. As a matter of fact, we went on our honeymoon. We came back from our honeymoon to activation orders with the National Guard. We had no idea it was coming. I actually thought it was a joke. I was like, "Your friends are such dicks." And I was like, but it was not. He was not. And we got married in May. May 24th, and we came home to activation orders from our honeymoon, and he was gone in August. He spent 6 months in training in Fort Hood. He went overseas for an entire year. He was gone 6 months overseas, home for 2 weeks, and then gone for 6 months again, and then came home and just felt really restless about, he had served this mission, and we had been, 9/11 happened at a time that was really critical, for our entire country. But for us, we were very formative. We were in our late teens, early 20s, deciding what we were going to do with our life, and the surge of patriotism, the surge of service to country. He went to Iraq with the National Guard. He served in that area. He did convoy support. He did all of these things. He rose in the ranks. He was respected. He was a leader. He was commended repeatedly for his restraint and good judgment and leadership skills. And then they're like, "We're done, thanks." And you go home, and, I had graduated. I had moved back to my parents' area because I had finished my degree, and his had been disrupted. He was at the very beginning of his. So I moved back to the Dallas-Fort Worth area to get a job and establish a career because I had my degree at that point. And he was just kind of like, "What do I do now?" And we really didn't know. So he goes to work at a Home Depot, right? Just a big box store, because I've moved, and he had just kind of gotten started at community college, and he wasn't really feeling like going back to college at that moment right then. Even though he had his GI Bill, he was really just feeling like. So he goes to a veterans career fair, and so at this veterans career fair, he runs into a company called Blackwater. And what Blackwater was really honestly billed to be everything that he loved about his deployment, about his mission, about just the camaraderie, the teamwork. He really believed in what they were doing over there. It was really an important mission to protect these diplomats in rebuilding Iraq, when we believed that was what we were doing. And we all know a little better now. We're a little older. We're a little wiser. We don't believe that anymore. But we were in our 20s, and I think you probably believed that too. And so what Blackwater offered was the ability to produce the same results, to go on the same missions, actually even more interesting, more complex, more important missions, and to have the opportunity to sign 1-year contracts instead of 8 years with our military. And then you deploy for 90 days at the time instead of 6 months at the time. And instead of coming home for 2 weeks at the time, you come home for 30 days at the time. And instead of somebody else picking where you're going to go and what position you're going to do, they offer you a position and a role, and you take it or you don't. So it seemed like a kind of duh moment for us when they said, oh, and by the way, we'll give you a bunch more money too. I mean, it was more money, and we didn't have to live in base housing, and I didn't have to give up my career to go posting up all over the country wherever the military decided to send us. So this is not like, you know, the shady underbelly of the military over here, like a bunch of flunkies. It's a bunch of people who are like, yeah, this is far more flexible. It suits my lifestyle. It suits my family's lifestyle. I didn't want to be part of the regular military and bounce around from here. I didn't want that. So it made perfect sense for us to him to become a military contractor. I didn't even know what the term mercenary was until, like, honestly, all this legal stuff came up. I'm not sure it even really, like, kind of came across my consciousness. It just wasn't part of my vernacular because he was an American citizen working for an American citizen on an American contract on an American base next to American Department of Defense and Department of State personnel and other contractors who were like doing the postal mail and the food and, you know, KBR and Halliburton and everybody. So there's just this like weird sense of, because it was what was in the media, right? And what's sexy in movies. And what they did was incredibly amazing. Like, these are absolutely the most elite individuals. And it's interesting because everybody has this impression that these are like shady individuals who like fell out somehow, when in fact they are actually the most elite people. Almost all of them have special services background, been through selection, have absolutely amazing records, and then have since proceeded to go on to incredible security careers for all kinds of individuals. And I know that Blackwater itself, that company, has whatever, you know, cryptic stuff it has going on, and they have clandestine contracts in other countries. That company does. They have clandestine contracts in other countries doing other things. They do things with OGAs, other government agencies. I don't know. None of my fucking business, to be honest with you, because that's not what we did. I am one girl. He is one guy, and he was American on an American contract and an American, you know, an American post. So like, I don't get the drama about it, but I do get that it really makes for a lot better media when they're like shady, scary people who flunked out of the military. So, all right, I've talked for 40 minutes. I'm exhausted. I almost cried a few times. I'm like, ugh, emotions in public, sick. So I'm going to go and relax right now. And then I'm going to figure out how I see the comments, 2, figure out if this little recap text thing is going to work, and D, purple, whatever list I'm on right now, figure out the rest of my life today. So even though I could not see comments, I felt your love. I felt your laughs. I felt your tears. I can see that there are 42 people that are still live with me, which is like pretty much unheard of, and just made my heart keep going when I felt like a little rambly and a little stupid or a little whatever. And I'm going to go back and watch this and figure what I covered and what I didn't. And we'll just keep talking, okay? I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.